Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Today's guest, Ernie Johnson Jr., is one of the most recognizable and loved sports personalities on TV. A longtime friend and client from my agent days, Ernie is a 3-time Sports Emmy Award winner and the popular host of TNT's Inside the NBA. EJ brings his detailed insights, humanity, and humor to every conversation. In his book, Unscripted, EJ opens up about life both on and off the screen, from his battle to cancer to raising 6 children, 4 of whom he and his wife Cheryl adopted. Ernie shares the most important life lessons he's learned in his journey. We talk about how he's been able to prioritize both work and family, the power of humility, and the beauty of living unscripted. This is a conversation you will not want to miss. It will make you simply want to be a better person. Here's my conversation with the one and only awesome Ernie Johnson Jr. Ernie Johnson, what a pleasure to have you on. You've been a friend and in so many ways a mentor to me. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for taking a minute.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Molly. It's we go back a minute, don't we?
We do. Well, and I guess you're not supposed to say this, but you were always one of our favorites and are one of our favorites. You're such a gift and such a special man. So I'm excited to share you with more of the world and our listeners. So this will be fun. You know, EJ, your dad obviously was a big league ball player turned broadcaster. Did you always know that, you wanted to go into sports journalism, that you wanted to do TV?
No, I always knew I wanted to be a baseball player. That's for sure. That's what I wanted to do. When you grow up, and look, I was the youngest of our 3 kids, so I didn't get to see him pitch, much because when they win the World Series in '57, I'm a year old. So. And he retires after the '59 season. So I've looked at old videos and that kind of thing. But certainly, when you grow up the son of a big league ball player, you're going to be hanging out in the front yard with a wiffle ball, basically every day of the year. I grew up just wanting to do that and took that as far as my freshman year at the University of Georgia. I walked on as a freshman, was told to walk off as a sophomore, and that was the end of the baseball dream. But that it's at that point, Molly, when you see something happen like that you're sitting out there on the lawn in between Russell Hall and Brumby Hall at the University of Georgia, and you're pondering your future when you're 18, 19 years old and say, okay, now what am I going to do? I guess I really do have to study, And so really at that point, I'd said, I want to be a baseball coach and an English teacher. Mm-hmm. I could see myself doing what my high school baseball coach, Jerry Queen, was doing. And that's being a teacher and a baseball coach, until I really gave broadcasting a try, because I'd been hanging out with my dad, who had become a broadcaster after his playing days. And once you try that, you either say that, yeah, this is for me, or it's like, I don't think so. And this was like, yeah, get into the games free, cover, be at all the stuff that everybody else wants to be at, and still be talking sports. I kind of landed right there and said, let's see where this will take me.
That's for sure. And I love how you talk about this, EJ. You always talk about, having a get-to job, not a got-to job.
Yeah.
What did you learn about TV from watching your dad?
Oh, he always had a get-to job. Just watching him do his work. And it was never like, he worked hard at it, but it wasn't like work, when he'd get to the ballpark 5 hours early, and he was just a fixture in the press room there. he'd sit down, well, he'd go on the field and do his interviews and that kind of thing. And then he'd go back up to the press room and just sit there with his stuff spread out and do all of his notes, 162 games a year, doing that same thing, and just watching how seriously he took it. But the more important thing to me was that when people wanted to fall all over themselves for him, when he'd show up someplace, oh, it's Ernie. Hey, Ernie, and he said, hey, no, I just, it's just, I'm fine. And everybody easy, I'm not special because I got this job, and I don't use this job to try to get stuff. It's just like this. That was just how he approached it. And I think one of the best things that I ever heard him say, and the story's been repeated, was when Skip Carey referred to him on a broadcast as the voice of the Braves. And my dad, when they went to commercial break, my dad told Skip in the commercial, he said, hey, if it's okay with you, we're all the voice of the Braves, okay? and it was like, that's just the way he was. He just felt it. He considered himself so blessed to be still doing, being involved in baseball, a sport he had given his life to. And now he was in his retirement years able to, smell the pine tar and the fresh cut grass all the time. And he never forgot that. It was just, and some things you learn not because he tells you to, just because you watch him. And going into that same business, it was like, I get what he meant now. I get what he meant about having this get to job, and also not feeling like you're anything special because you got it.
Inherited that humility, right, from your dad, and you've lived into what he lived into so much every day. I mean, I've seen that up close and personal with you, and your dad, he was the best man in your wedding, wasn't he?
Yeah. There was no question that was going to be the case. As long as he didn't have something better to do, I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. I mean, it was like he was the guy. So,
well, he would have taken a pass on a game to be in your wedding. That's for darn sure.
Yeah. It took a lot though to get him to miss the ball game.
Yeah. Sure.
I need to tell you.
We all have defining moments in our lives, and one of them I want to dig into a little bit is in '91 when you and Cheryl adopted Michael, and a special needs boy from Romania. And I've had the blessing and the pleasure of meeting Michael and talking about cars with Michael every time he drills me about my car, which is cool. But tell us a little bit about Michael.
Well, I mean, that was one of those things, Molly, when you start out, we got married in '82. Cheryl and I got married in '82. We had a son, Eric, in '84, a daughter, Maggie, in '87. And so, it's kind of like the perfect script, it's great wife, great job, a boy and a girl. All right, let's, okay, everybody in the bunker, let's try to,
sure,
wait this out. And then really it was like in 1991, the ABC News on 2020 had done the story about the Romanian orphans over there being warehoused, and especially the special needs kids, and were basically forgotten. Look, I know when I met Cheryl Ann that I had outkicked my coverage, and that she was, I was 4 years older, but she was like light years more mature than I was, and had this great worldview, and was just more aware of things. And so I was always playing catch up in that department. And then I realized how far behind I was in 1991 when I come home, and she tells me, I come home from work one day and she tells me about this story. And then she says, I just think we got to go over there and get one of those kids. And I was like, man, you're serious about this. Wow. And so the more we investigated, the more we thought that was something we wanted to do. And so she went over there with a group of, there were several groups over there who routinely took people to Romania, and who with the intention of adopting. And so we had gone through all of the this big process, lots of red tape, and got cleared that we were okay to be adoptive parents, and home studies and all that stuff. And so Cheryl Ann goes over there with this group. She doesn't know anybody in the group. I'm home with Eric and Maggie, and Cheryl's more concerned about them being with me for a month or two, these kids aren't going to see a vegetable, while I'm gone. And to be sure, there was a lot of pizza and putt-putt while she was gone. And so she goes over there, and we really thought it might be a month or something like that. And then she ran into all of the bureaucratic stuff that goes on. And especially as this was becoming more common, more people were over there adopting, and now rules were changing, by the hour. Okay. No. Okay. And there were holds being, okay, no more adoptions. Okay. Now this, okay, only if you're here by this date can you still go, and so we're sitting here, and it's, that's 91, Molly. And it's not like pick up the cell and call Cheryl Ann and find out what's going on. It's sure. Like, some of this stuff, would cross the Associated Press wire while I was at work. And I'd be reading this stuff and say Romanian officials say that they're, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So it actually took 2 months, and look, we had no idea who she was going to adopt. Turns out the first kid they bring out is this 3-year-old boy who can't walk or talk, and Cheryl Ann just falls in love with him, and she calls me and said, man, the first kid they brought out, I said, it's more, he's so much more than we can handle. But I just don't know what I'm going to do if I go the rest of my life and wonder what happened to him. And I heard her say that, and I said, well, bring him home. It's like, that's why you're there. And this kid has struck a chord, and, we could go over all of but what if this and what if that? And it was just like, look, this is a kid who needs a second chance, and so bring him home. And the thing that's crazy is that, the nurse who handed him to her the first time, it said, don't take this boy, he's no good. And so that's what these kids are faced with. It's like, on the surface, you look and say, wow, look at the issues here. But he's taught us, through the years, as a kid with muscular dystrophy, we didn't, he was diagnosed with MD when we got him back. He already had a bunch of developmental delays. He had this ridiculous memory and this fixation on cars, as you found out. But he's been just an incredible blessing. And I've told people, look, he's lived so much longer than anybody would think. He's 33 years old now. He's done more for us than we've done for him. So I wake up every day and look at a miracle. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, and he is. And so are you and Cheryl for pouring into Michael. He's so special. What has he, Ernie, what has he taught you, and how has it changed your perspective?
He's just taught me contentment, I think, in a way. It doesn't take much to make him content. If you'll make him a new playlist so he can listen to some music and maybe laminate some car pictures for him, that's great. He's not, he's not demanding. It's never, it's such a weird thing too, because, he didn't speak till he was 8. And so he wouldn't verbalize the frustration he had, when he'd see other kids running around, or he was just able to, walk with leg braces. And then he goes in a wheelchair when he's 12 and has been in there for the last 21 years. He's been on a ventilator for the last 10. It's like, there's never a why me kind of a deal. He's just, he's content. And I think what he's done for me too is that every morning he puts me in a servant mentality. I realize that when the nurse, he has overnight nursing care. When the nurse leaves, and Cheryl Ann and I are, we've got him from 10 o'clock in the morning until the nurse shows up at 10 o'clock that night, that everything that he needs done, we have to do. And so you realize then, you're like, okay, I'm here to serve, what do you need? And you know what, Molly, it's going to sound strange, but when it really resonates with you, it's like when he just asks you to scratch him somewhere, like scratch my back, or scratch my nose. And you think about how many times during the day, just in the course of a day, are we sitting around and something, you reach over and you scratch your arm, back of my head. He can't do that. He can't scratch any itch. He needs somebody to do that for him. And so that's kind of where it hits me a lot too. It's just like this, the most basic things that we take for granted, we do without thinking. It's like he's looking at you across the room like, man, my nose, scratch my nose, So yeah, so that's what it's done.
The world, I'm sure many people have seen the ESPN, 30 for 30, and I mean, I remember once meeting for lunch, and you left the set, and pull up in a minivan, and we get Michael out, and we go have lunch, and I think you spent most of the lunch, scratching his back and certainly feeding him as you just described, and so that servant mindset is front and center with you almost all day long. It is all day long. Yes, it's remarkable. It's awesome. I've always admired so much about you, EJ, is your work ethic is incredible, right? Your drive is incredible. But you've always kept family and Cheryl and the kids so in the center of all of it. And, I think sometimes that's hard for people who aspire to have a thriving career, but also keep their family front and center. And you've lived that. You walk that walk every single day. How have you done that? What is the mindset around that, the behaviors around that that have allowed you to do that?
Well, I haven't, it's not like I've been able to do that all the time and figure it out. I think I've been in exactly the same boat as that most everybody listening to this has been in, where there come times when that crossroads of your work life and your family life come to this crazy intersection where it's like, it's like when you're driving on a road where they've just changed the traffic pattern, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, why does this lane go over here and now this lane's here? And well, I wasn't ready for this. And it's like, so how are you going to do that? And what I tell folks after failing at it miserably a lot is just that you have to be intentional about making time for your family. You has to, and I think sometimes it requires a change in how you do your other work and in working ahead. That's why you talk about a work ethic. I mean, a lot of times I'm trying to work well in advance so that tomorrow isn't going to be as hectic. I can look at my schedule and say, wow, I've got this going on and then I've got this. It would be great to get this done now. And then I won't have to worry about that tomorrow. And then maybe I can squeeze in that hour to go over to my son's school and have lunch with him, and it's like, it's always thinking. It's not just looking at your schedule and saying, boy, that's really a busy week. I don't have time for anything but work. I think you have to be intentional about that and say, I didn't really plan on doing this, but, even 15 or 20 minutes here might mean the world. And instead of me just staying in bed this morning, no, I am going to go up to the bus stop with you. No, instead of watching Monday Night Football, I am going to read to you tonight. I think those things are so important, and you can lose sight of the fact that they're important to the kids, especially, or to your wife. If you're going to, just doing something that you're not asked to do. Wow, you made the bed. Wow, you did the dishes. Wow, what are you doing vacuuming? It's like anything I can do that takes something off of you, just to tell you, that tells you I'm thinking about you, and I don't want you to have to do everything. A lot of times those things may seem insignificant, but as far as like kids go, and I've always said it, they have superpowers. They see and hear everything. And they remember like crazy, they remember that you made an effort to do this, and that I think just being intentional is the deal. And sure, there are still going to be times that come up, and there still are with me, where I sure would like to be there for that, but it's game 5 of the NBA playoffs, and I'm, and we've got a doubleheader tonight, and and they understand that Dad has work to do. But they also they appreciate when you have looked at your schedule and said, no, I got a little window in there and I'm going to make the most of it.
I mean, you have a lot of things going on in your life, but yet you pull up and you walk into that booth, right, with some big personalities, and you must have a way in which you can compartmentalize so that you can be fully present on the set. How do you do that so that you can really show up for the moments that you need to show up? And at home too, right? When you maybe have stuff coming at you from a work perspective, but yet you're walking to the bus stop or you're walking to your son's lunch. How does that work?
I don't know if I consciously compartmentalize. It's just like, okay, I'm sitting here now with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and Shaquille O'Neal. Obviously, I'm not home right now. And I just think you're focusing on, we're here. There are a million people out there or more watching this and expecting to be entertained. And what I try to never lose sight of is the fact that there are going to be people out there, and maybe this is the first time they've watched the show, and because we've had some success on there and people have talked about the show, maybe they've said, oh, this is that show everybody's talking about, and they say it's really funny. And so you can't show up and mail it in and say, okay, yeah, we're just going to do the show like we did the last one. But again, at the same time, you're not trying to force anything. You're saying, this is how we do our thing. This is what we do. I'm kind of like the guy who's trying to get us from point A to point B to point C. And these are the Hall of Famers and NBA champions. And so let's let it roll. And so I don't think it's hard to, be in the moment and be present when you're doing the show. But I think that the times where it might be a little difficult, especially with us, are those times when maybe it hasn't been a good day, and maybe Michael is running another fever, because we're constantly dealing with like lung issues with him, and especially at this time, it's kind of, oh man, over the last year and a half, that's been a big concern. But it's like there are times where, yeah, you've been dealing with that over the phone with your wife for the last couple hours leading up to the show, and now you're just kind of, yeah, you're going to turn the page and know that, okay, after the show, I'm going to check back in with her. So, but for this moment, for these 15 minutes, bang, this is what we're doing. We're doing the show, and nobody at home needs to think, well, what's wrong with him tonight? He must have a lot on his mind, because all of us have that,
right?
Molly.
Sure,
every
totally.
Every day we're at work, we have that. It's never like, okay, walk in the door. Isn't this great?
Right.
Even if you do have a get-to job, there are things that are going on. It's relationships, it's health, it's kids, it's all of that stuff. And so, no, we all have it. And then I think we all just need, there are times where it's a challenge to focus on what you're doing, because something that means so much to you is also weighing pretty heavily.
What I'm also hearing you say is, at the end of the day, when you sit down behind on set, it's not about you again, right? Like, it's about the people that are watching. It's about the people you're serving. It's about showing up for them.
Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome. That's what it's all about.
It is, I think. And I think you never make, that's one thing my dad was always really staunch on. He said, look, this game is not about me. It's for him, this is the baseball. The game is the thing. It's not who's calling the game. So he said, I get to call it. He said, but that's the way it is too. I think if you go on there and say, I want to make this show about me, then it can't help but fail. But when the thought process from us as the guys who are on air and from the producers is what's going to make the show better, then that's when you've got it. And so if Shaq's going to be the guy that everybody's talking about that night, fine. Did it make the show better? Do people want to watch? Yeah. Or is it Kenny or is it Chuck? But if you see somebody trying too hard to say, hey, more FaceTime for me. Hey, I need to do this. It's like, get out of the way a little bit. Let the show go. Most of the stuff that we do that makes people laugh is organic anyway. It's not like you can say, okay, we're going to make Kenny Smith a star tonight. We're going to do this for him. We're going to do it's normally just something that comes out of a normal conversation. And all of a sudden we ride that the rest of the night. And whether that's somebody making a mistake or somebody spilling on themselves, it's like, and because we do things on that show that you've been taught in TV for ages not to do. Don't draw any attention to mistakes. But instead, Charles comes out and he's got a stain on his lapel from spilling some dinner. And I hear the producer saying, we're coming in with a tight shot of that stain on Chuck. He's telling me, but not telling anybody else. But meantime, other shows, you would see the stage manager run out there with the club soda and make sure you shoot him wide. Don't shoot him wide. Right. We live for moments like that. We just, anytime we can drive the Greyhound over any of us. And that's what we do. And that's what makes it fun, is because we all laugh at each other and we laugh at ourselves. And I don't know that anybody does that enough these days.
Well, I can't imagine trying to, throw up a teleprompter with Barkley and Shaq and Kenny. I mean, I'm not sure that would work. But those guys are such big personalities, and you are the glue, man. I mean, you are the thread. Give me like a good one, a practical joke or a moment on set with those. I can't imagine the list is endless, but kind of get me inside of maybe a favorite story from the set with those guys.
When Kenny Smith wanted to duplicate the Kobe Bryant jumping over an Aston Martin CGI bit, I think that's probably one of my favorites of all time, because Kobe was debuting his new shoe. And so he had this thing where he walked out in the parking lot, the speeding Aston Martin came right at him. He jumped over it and it went past. And so, it's going viral and everybody's laughing at it. And Kenny says, let's do that in our parking lot. And he tells the producer and director how he wants to do it. And they said, we can do that. And he said, that's not a hard visual to recreate. So Kenny goes out and does it, and then walks back in to get ready for the show. And I looked at the director and producer and said, so that's all you guys are going to do? He said, no, this is far from what we're going to do. Kenny thinks we've duplicated it. He said, now we need to get us a blow up doll or something like that, because we're actually going to run over it with a car. And so that when this happens on the air, Kenny will jump or try to jump, but he will get taken out by the car. And we're going to have this blow up doll with clothing on. It's going to fly up in the air and all this. And I said, oh, this would be great. And I said, who's driving the car? And they said, well, we hadn't thought about that. And I said, well, shoot me behind the wheel. So the way this thing plays out, and it couldn't have been more perfect, Molly, because that night, we're going to run that at the end of the show, on Inside the NBA. But as it so happens, we had the Lakers on in the second game of the doubleheader. Kobe went off for like 47. He's our guest to start off the show, coming off this huge game. And we say, Kobe, we were going to end the show with this, but we're going to start the show with this. Kenny wanted to do his jump over the Aston Martin. And we play this thing. None of us have seen it. Kenny expects it to look just like the Kobe thing. Here it comes. He gets hit by the car. I'm behind the wheel. We're all howling. Kobe is howling. This is all live. And it was just one of these, just an example of the teamwork that we have on there. Kenny didn't know this was happening. Neither did Chuck. I think Magic was on at that time. But that's the thing. It's not like you rehearsed it 10 times, so everybody knows what's going to be said from one segment to the next. This was just, if you don't know at home what's about to happen, neither do we. We hope you think this is funny.
In just a minute, we'll get back to the conversation. But first, I want to share a free resource for you. Through this podcast, I've had the opportunity to connect with more than 100 leaders, championship coaches, elite athletes, business leaders, and thought leaders. I've learned so many valuable insights from these conversations that I decided to distill it down into 7 mindset shifts that can help you reimagine your role as a leader. You'll also get a playbook with exercises to help you put these principles into action. To get your free playbook, just go to mollyfletcher.com/mindset shifts. Again, that's mollyfletcher.com/mindset shifts. Now back to the show. The show's evolved too, right? From its creation. Yeah. And it's really kind of unlike any other show, or it was certainly at the time. How has it evolved, over time? And sort of when early in sort of this journey of this rawness at some level, was it tough to buy into that vision?
Yeah, well, I mean, when it started out, I signed on at Turner back in '89. I became the host of that show in the 90-91 season. And look, for a while I was doing it by myself, just doing highlights. Then I'd have, Cheryl Miller with me, Dick Versace, Reggie Theus, and then during during the playoffs, we would, they would trot out whoever wanted to come in. They'd have Chuck Daly in there, had Barkley in there when he was still a player. Shaq was in there. These guys would come in for like 1, 2, 3 nights and be the studio analyst. And so I'm constantly kind of like, okay, I'm learning about, okay, Alonzo Mourning now. I'm going to be working with Alonzo. He's never done TV. Okay, how is this going to go? And now I got Kareem for a couple of nights. So it was really cool and a lot of fun. But it was more of a traditional kind of a highlight driven show. You didn't really have a whole lot to play off, especially when you're doing the show by yourself. And it's like, man, I thought that was a pretty good line, and nobody laughed. Nobody, the cameramen are sitting there not supposed to do anything. Everybody's supposed to be quiet, and you're thinking, wonder if anybody at home thought that was funny. Oh, I'm getting distracted. And so the greatest thing about having Kenny come on, and then and Chuck, and then eventually Shaq, is just the freedom to play off each other, the freedom to interrupt each other and laugh at each other, and have that whole thing going on. And it just allows you to be more natural. It just allowed for a friendship to just kind of evolve in front of people's eyes. I really feel like it was that way. It was like people would watch and say, man, I just feel like you guys really like each other. So we do. We really do. We come at the game from different angles. But I think we all realize that, wow, we're sitting here, especially during the regular season, we're working one night, maybe 2, and they're paying us to do that. And we show up and talk basketball. And then we, half the time we go way off the grid where you would turn it on and say, is this a basketball show? They haven't talked basketball in the last 15 minutes. That makes it fun and keeps it fresh. And again, those guys are all, again, the way they come at the game. That's what makes it, if they were all the same guy and all agreed all the time, but they rarely agree. And the thing that's great is the disagreements are legit. It's not like, okay, you take this side and you take this side for argument's sake, because that just is phony. You can't argue something and not really believe it, and so that's why you get these behemoths on either side of the set, and Shaq and Charles, whoever can yell louder, and then, Shaq threatening Charles with physical violence. But that's never going to happen, by the way. People think they're going to throw hands. They are. I can see it coming tonight. No, it's not. These guys love each other, but they also realize that letting themselves disagree on the air is fine.
Well, and then there's you, right? Gluing all of this, holding this whole thing together. And you have, you're not afraid of tough conversations. I mean, you don't shy away from those moments at all. And you have this incredible platform. How have you learned to lean into those moments, those tough conversations?
It's come with the evolution of the show. And by the way, you're talking about glue and the thread and all this stuff. The best description I ever heard from somebody, I was on somebody's show, and they were talking about, hey, the traffic cop, you're the lion tamer, you're the, he said, you know what you are? He says, you're the dad driving cross country with 3 kids in the back seat, who's putting his arm on the back seat and turning around saying, if I hear one more peep out of you, I'm turning this thing around. Which is probably more what it's like.
Absolutely.
But I think when Chuck came on the show, he changed the landscape of shows like this. He made it okay to not just sit here and talk, basketball for a half hour, 45 minutes. If the game wasn't any good, he would say it. If something was happening in the world, he'd say, man, and he would weigh in. And so I think, especially in the last few years, when things have, gotten sideways and things have happened in the world that everybody is talking about, we've kind of said, look, if everybody in the world is talking about this, we can talk about it too. I mean, and I know there are some people who will say, look, I turn on a sports event because I want to watch sports. I don't want to hear about problems in society. I don't want to hear about, what you think about this. But it's, look, if you go into work and everybody is talking about a situation, at the water cooler, nobody says, hey, look, we're business people. We don't, nobody cares what we think. No, we all care what we think. And I think we all, and sometimes it helps us deal with what we're seeing to verbalize it. And so, so for us to talk about social unrest and to talk about uh, presidential elections and talk about whatever, we're going to do that. And I think we've gotten to the point where it doesn't surprise people when we're going to take a while and say, hey, look, we're going to talk about this. And this is not going to be an easy conversation. And it's fine. Look, I wish we lived in a place where we didn't need to do that. I wish we got to the point where, boy, everything's great. Everybody's happy. But that's not where we are. And I think if you don't go there and don't allow our guys to have a voice and all of us to have a voice, then sometimes I feel like you're sticking your head in the sand, like you're doing this show in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Like we realize this is going on in the world, but hey, this is basketball.
Right.
And while on the other side, it should be, look what's going on in the world. We're just talking about basketball. I think we have something that's worth saying. And it's not like you feel like, oh, I'm going to solve all this, but I mean, like the show we did on Kobe Bryant when he died from Staples Center, where we just let everybody talk and kind of deal with it. I think to me, it was therapeutic. It was therapeutic for me. And I think from a lot of fans, from what I heard, it was just like, it kind of helped them through that. And so I think sometimes when, you can get caught up in the crazy stuff that we do and in the basketball highlights, but I think there is more to it there if you handle it the right way. Now, if you get on there and you just start spouting off without having done any research or knowing anything, then, if people want to say, hey, stick to your sports, because if you're not going to research this and know what you're talking about, I don't want to hear it. And that's cool. I get that. But I think that's what behooves you to be on top of what's going on in the world, so you can have an opinion that is valid and that is worth listening to.
But that realness, that authenticity, those moments like that is what, in my opinion, draws people to all of you and to the entire show, is this authenticity, this just unscripted, as you say, and as you titled your book. It's what makes it, to me, so powerful. And in you, knowing you, right, you come at it from this place of love. I mean, you really do, right? Like, you come at all of it from this place of love, which in my opinion drives that realness, obviously, and that connection. In 2003, when you shared with us at the office that you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but the world didn't find out about it for almost 3 years, right? And you kept grinding it, right? You kept going. What went into that decision to stay on air while you were battling cancer? That was important to you.
It was, and it was because in 2003, so when I got diagnosed, you couldn't even tell. You look at me in 2003, you couldn't tell. There was nothing that outwardly would say that I was sick, and I felt great. But there were times like when I would have to do they would have to do like a muscle biopsy or something like that. I remember they went into my neck once, and then I was right in the middle of college football season when they were doing that, and I was working with Brian Bosworth, and I was wearing like these turtlenecks to cover that up. And I wasn't telling anybody what was going on. I know that one of the lighting guys came up to me one time. It was like pointed. I said, "What's going on there?" And I said, "I just had a little minor surgery. I'm good, but I'm just wearing this so I don't have this big Band-Aid on while I'm on the air." But I didn't have to do anything until 2006 because I was asymptomatic, and they call it watchful waiting, and with what I had, I'd let you guys know. I'd let a couple of executives at Turner know, just in case, just in case all of a sudden they say, hey, you need to start treatment. Hey, you need to have somebody fill in or whatever. Yeah. So that was just 3 years of just doing your work. Nobody knew anything. And then when my lymph nodes started swelling up and it was obvious what was going on, then I had to tell people on the air, what was happening. But it was important to me to not, just stop working. It was important to me to say, look, I have cancer, but I'm not going to go into hiding. And it was very freeing for me to tell people what was going on, so that I wasn't just hearing the whispers of, man, something's going on with him. What's wrong? What's wrong with his face? What's wrong with his neck? And so as long as they could put up with that and realize, okay, that's what he's got going on. But I still had people saying, well, I can't believe you're not doing chemo right now. And I said, I'm doing what my oncologist says. My oncologist says we can wait till the end of the basketball season in 2006 and then we can do it. And so that's how we did it. And I missed the PGA Championship that year while I was doing chemo, but came back for basketball and been in remission ever since. And so, it's just one of those, and that's again one of those real life things. We all have stuff, Molly. I mean, and everybody's been touched by cancer in some way. Whether it's you or whether it's a family member or a friend. And like when somebody in your family gets cancer, it attacks maybe one person, but it affects everybody. It affects how your kids, are scared. Your wife is scared. You're trying to handle that part of it and get through that and be as strong as you can for them. Shoot, I've told so many people who are undergoing treatment. I mean, one of the things that cancer did, it gives you an opportunity and a responsibility to help the next person through it. And I've told so many people, I said, look, you may have cancer, but it doesn't have you. I said, I didn't come up with that. Somebody passed that on to me when I was going through it.
Sure.
And I'm passing it on to them too. And so that's what I think, we have that responsibility for these folks who are in this club that nobody wants to be in, to help them through it and say, you know what? In a couple of years, you're going to be on the phone with somebody you've never met, and you're going to be helping them through it too.
I love how you talk about that. You may have cancer, but cancer doesn't have you, and that is certainly how you leaned into that moment in time. Your book, it's called Unscripted. It's an incredible read. For people who haven't read it yet, I can't encourage you enough to pick it up. And I love how you talk about, Ernie, like blackberry moments in the book. Talk about what you mean by blackberry moments. Maybe share a bit about that.
That's kind of like the thread that runs through it. And it goes back to an old Little League story back when I was 9 years old, when we actually had a game that was delayed because our left fielder and center fielder went over the fence to get a ball, but got sidetracked and found a bunch of blackberries there, and we're just eating blackberries and have forgotten about the game. And so when I say blackberry moments, some people think, oh man, he still uses a blackberry. And I said, no, it has nothing to do with anything electronic. It's actual blackberries. I think as you get older and wiser, hopefully wiser, Molly, it kind of became a modern day parable for me, where you can't be afraid to step away from the game and enjoy the blackberry moments. And the blackberry moments became for me just these unpredictable moments that make your life extraordinary. And they don't have to be these world-changing moments that just absolutely rock your existence. It can be just as simple as, buying the person behind you a cup of coffee at the QT. It can be as simple as holding the door open for somebody, or reaching, something on the top shelf at the grocery store for somebody you can't reach. It's just kind of trying to make somebody's life better even for a moment. And so those are the blackberry moments. And I think, they've come to there. And that the thing is, it's such a loose definition, but I'm sitting here in my home office and I'm looking at a rock that my granddaughter painted that for some reason I can't get rid of, because I remember when she handed that to me and it was like, man, and those are blackberry moments. And so I think that they're there for us to enjoy as long as we're able to step away from the game. And that is, again, get out of your emails for 5 minutes. Let's not focus on the next conference call. Let's not focus on, get away from that game. Don't be afraid to step away. There are things, if you look to the right or left, you might be amazed at, wow, that really made my day. And that's part of the thing. And so that's what we live for. I get texts all the time from Maggie and Eric, my two oldest, and Carmen, who we also adopted, by the way, from Paraguay 2 years after Michael. We get a text from them. Boy, this is a blackberry moment. I mean, it's just part of our family. It's awesome. Just part of our family vernacular now. It's kind of the thread that goes through everything. I mean, we could look at our lives and say these are all connected by blackberry moments. And so, but the thing is, you got to be able to step away from that game.
Mm-hmm. And spot them and see them and enjoy them. And
yeah, you can't do that either, Molly, if it's all about you. If all you are is focused on me and here's the next thing I've got to do and I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and you're not looking to the left and the right to say, to heck with me for a minute. How about this guy? How about this coworker who only needs 3 minutes of your time to say he's struggling? How about this person who just wants you to recognize, to be able to tell them what their name is? The person you see in the hall all the time, and you can say, and you call them out by name, and not just your cursory, how you doing, but how are you? Good. Those things are huge. And I think sometimes we get in such a rush, we miss them.
Your faith has been central to the way you live your life and to who you and Cheryl and the 6 children that you have are. How has that been tested and maybe strengthened, EJ, over time?
No, it was tested probably, through cancer. And I don't know if it was tested, but it was stretched a little bit, because it was like, I wanted to shake my hand at God a little bit and say, why me? Why is this? Here, we've got, at that point, we've got 4 kids, and we've adopted Michael from Romania, Carmen from Paraguay, Carmen perfectly healthy, but here we got 4 kids, and it's like, why me? And then one of my best friends is a pastor, Kevin Myers, at my church outside Atlanta. And we just sat down at a Starbucks. I still have the notes that he wrote down stuff on a brown Starbucks napkin back then in 2003, and I kept them. And it was something as simple as, this is, who do you trust? You say that you trust God, but what does that look like right now? And it was conditional at that point. It was like, I'll trust God if this next test comes back, or I'll trust God when this goes away, or I'll trust God, if. And he said that's not really trust. It's got to be trust God, period. And so that's been my mantra. Any email you get from me, it's at the bottom of all of them. It's trust God, period. Meaning, look, whatever this is going to be, I'm in. And I'm not going to, if I'm not going to question when I'm on a mountaintop, if I'm not going to, if they're going to say, and the Emmy goes to Ernie Johnson, I'm not going to sit there and say, why me, God? Why, you're
Sure.
enjoying the moment. You're saying, wow, okay, this is nice. And at the same time, when the doctor calls you and says, hey, it's cancer, I'm going to trust that this is going to take me through something that eventually I will come. I may not understand it right then, but I will. It's going to make me into something I need to be, and it's going to provide me some opportunities and some moments that are going to kind of define who I am and mold who I am. And so sometimes that's not the easiest thing in the world to do when you're sitting in a chair and you're watching this 6-hour drip. But at the same time, while that's happening and you look across the infusion room and you lock eyes with a guy who's going down the same road, there's a bond that forms there, and there is a strength there that I would never have known had I not been sitting in that chair. And so my faith was huge, and I tell folks, when getting through that was faith, family, and friends. It's like people reaching out and hitting the send button on an email out of the blue, and it makes you, that's a blackberry moment for you. It really is. It's like it's like when you were not feeling great and somebody, again, didn't put it off, didn't say, I really need to reach out to him and say, hey, hang in there, but you keep on putting that off and putting that off. You can't do that. You can't, when that strikes you, you've got to say, you know what, this is going to take maybe 3 minutes. I'm going to write a little note and I'm going to hit send. I'm not going to say, okay, yeah, I'll make sure that I do that this week, because you don't know what's going to happen next, the rest of that week.
So, Ernie, we end with rapid fire. I'm going to hit you with some quick ones and you just fire back, all right?
Oh, this is always frightening for me.
You got this, man. Just be real. Unscripted. All right. Most memorable sporting event you've ever attended or covered?
Oh, Henry Aaron hitting his 715th home run. I was there as a fan. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, it may be too early to predict. NBA Finals prediction for next season?
Yeah, too early to predict.
Too early to predict? You're calling the fifth.
There's so much hanging up in the air. I don't know about the Lakers with those three. I know. So, no, it's way too early it's way too early.
What about NBA MVP for the season?
Kevin Durant.
Durant, wow, awesome. What's a habit or belief that's improved your life?
I carry in my pocket 12 pennies. Actually, and what I carry them in now is just this little container because they started to fall out like when I was driving and that thing. So now I have a little bag, and inside are 12 pennies and a piece of a shell from the beach we like to go to. And each of those pennies has the date of something significant in my life. So we've got on there, I can pull one out. I can pull the thing out, just pull the penny out and look at the date. And sometimes, or I can just jiggle that thing. And I remember in the course of the day, the stuff that's important and the stuff that's really vital to me. When things start getting crazy and I feel those pennies in there. And so, so it's the dates of birth of all my kids, the year Cheryl and I got married, grandchildren. And sometimes I'll just take one of those out and look at the date and just say a quick prayer for that person, and in the middle of the day. So that's been the thing that I've really, when I go to work, when I go out, it's not like I don't take them out there when I'm working in the yard because I don't want to lose them, but it's like, that's a habit that I've, and again, it takes a little while because that's going through a bunch of pennies
that's
and looking
12,
for specific dates. And now, and I've done it so often that now I have backups for each date in case I do lose one.
That's smart. Well, you have a lot of little cool, like when you tug on your shirt sleeve on the air.
Yeah, on my cuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what anytime when we come on the air, it's just to say, hey, they know what that means. It's not like I have to do it. It's just one of those thinking about you.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Well, be yourself from my dad was and a lot of stuff comes from my dad because he preached hard work, but I think be yourself is the most basic and probably the most long lasting and for me is just to remember that and don't try to be who you think people want you to be or what's gonna maybe get you through this. Well, if I say this, then they'll think, oh, wow, that guy's really cool. It's like, no, this is who I am, and so I think that's the easiest one.
That's awesome. So fill in the blank. Success is
fleeting, and success is the result of being the hardest worker in the room.
Which you are, man. We didn't have time to get into your binders. I love it. Those are impressive, man. So the show's called Game Changers. So one last question. Who or what game changer inspires you and why?
A man named Phil Beaulieu, who is the high school basketball coach who actually put my son Michael on his high school basketball team at Mill Creek High School because he saw value in somebody who did not appear to have it. In the eyes of the world, there was this handicapped kid, and what's he going to do to help a basketball team? But Phil Beaulieu saw the value and put Michael on there so that he could teach that team maximum effort and have a heart for other people. And that was mission accomplished. So Phil Beaulieu is my game changer.
I love it. Ernie, thank you so much. This was a BlackBerry moment for me, and I know for so many others. So thanks so much, man.
No, Molly, it's always so good talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was fun.
I mean, there are so many nuggets inside of this conversation with EJ. As you can tell, an incredible human being. Here's a couple of my favorite takeaways. Number one, don't be afraid to get off script. When EJ and Cheryl adopted 3-year-old Michael from Romania, it was a defining moment in his life. As he described, the moment he began the unscripted life. EJ's story is such a powerful example of what can happen when we let go of the world's expectations, of others' expectations, and we start living a life unscripted. And the impact when we do that it can make. Number two, it's not about you. I love that. It's not about you. EJ is one of the most humble people you will ever meet. He's a great reminder that no matter how much success you have, you're never too big to serve. If you go through life focused on yourself and you're constantly in a hurry, then we miss opportunities throughout the day, all day long, to connect and to make an impact on somebody else's life. Number 3, make space for BlackBerry moments. No, not the BlackBerry phone, BlackBerry moments. EJ describes a BlackBerry moment as an unpredictable moment that makes life extraordinary. They're everywhere, but we have to stay present to find them. Here's to more BlackBerry moments in all of our lives. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.